Most people think discipline makes you productive. It doesn't. The people who become truly dangerous through discipline use it for something far more unsettling. They use discipline to remove every weakness other people rely on to control them. And once that happens, people stop knowing how to influence you. That is when discipline stops looking harmless. Most people are emotionally predictable. They react to pressure, temptation, validation, fear, comfort, and attention almost automatically. But disciplined individuals slowly break those patterns inside themselves. And human beings become deeply uncomfortable around people they can no longer influence easily. What makes disciplined people dangerous is not aggression. It is emotional control. Most people reveal themselves too quickly. Their anger appears immediately. Their insecurity appears immediately. Their impulses become visible almost instantly through their reactions. But disciplined people learn to contain emotion without suppressing awareness. And that creates a kind of psychological unpredictability that others instinctively notice. You can observe this in almost every social environment. The least disciplined person in a room is usually the easiest to manipulate. They need approval faster. They seek comfort faster. They react emotionally faster. Their behavior changes depending on attention, pressure, temptation, or insecurity. But disciplined individuals remain internally stable, even when external conditions begin shifting around them. Most people never notice how emotionally exposed they become the moment discomfort appears. That stability creates tension in other people without saying a word. Human beings are constantly trying to read emotional openings in each other. Weakness, neediness, validation seeking, fear, impulse. Most interactions are shaped by these invisible psychological signals. But disciplined people reveal fewer openings because they train themselves not to obey every emotional impulse immediately. And this is where discipline quietly becomes power. The moment you stop reacting automatically, people lose many of the methods they normally use to influence you. Guilt becomes weaker. Temptation becomes weaker. Social pressure becomes weaker. Emotional manipulation begins failing more often. Because disciplined people slowly remove emotional leverage from their lives piece by piece. The fewer emotional openings you reveal, the harder people become able to influence you. Most individuals never realize how controlled they actually are. Their attention is controlled. Their routines are controlled. Their emotions are controlled. Their desires are controlled. They believe they are making independent decisions while constantly reacting to whatever feeling becomes strongest in the moment. Discipline interrupts that cycle, and interruption creates psychological separation from the crowd. That separation is what many people secretly sense when they encounter someone highly disciplined. It is not always visible externally at first. Sometimes it appears only through calmness, through restraint, through consistency, through silence under pressure. But underneath those behaviors is something much deeper. A person who is becoming harder to emotionally destabilize over time. People become uneasy around individuals who no longer react the way they expect. Machiavelli understood that controlled people often appear more dangerous than emotional people. Emotional individuals are easier to predict because their reactions expose their internal state constantly. But disciplined individuals create uncertainty. They do not reveal everything immediately. They do not react impulsively. They do not collapse emotionally under discomfort the same way most people do. And unpredictability has always created psychological power. This is why discipline changes the way people observe you socially. Once your reactions become controlled, people begin projecting onto you more heavily. Some interpret your silence as confidence. Others interpret it as intimidation. Some feel respect. Others feel discomfort. but very few remain emotionally neutral around individuals who appear deeply in control of themselves. Human beings instinctively fear what they cannot emotionally predict. Most people spend their lives escaping discomfort. They escape boredom through stimulation. They escape insecurity through validation. They escape stress through distraction. They escape loneliness through constant noise and emotional dependency. But disciplined individuals train themselves to tolerate discomfort voluntarily, and that changes the structure of their mind completely over time. If you are beginning to understand how emotional control changes power dynamics, you should read my free ebook, The Art of Strategic Indifference. It explores psychological restraint, silence, emotional detachment, manipulation patterns, and why disciplined people slowly become difficult to influence over time. It is written for people learning how to protect their mind from distraction, emotional chaos, and unnecessary influence. The ebook is completely free. Link is in the description. The moment you become capable of sitting with discomfort without immediately escaping it, many forms of control begin weakening automatically. Fear loses influence. Temptation loses influence. Emotional pressure loses influence. Because most systems of manipulation depend on predictable emotional reactions, and disciplined people slowly stop reacting predictably, most people are controlled through the very things they refuse to resist. That is why disciplined individuals often appear calmer than everyone else during pressure. It is not because they feel less emotion. It is because they train themselves not to obey every emotion automatically. Most people have never created that separation internally. The moment emotion appears, behavior follows immediately. Discipline creates a space between feeling and action, and inside that space, power quietly forms. You begin noticing something else as discipline deepens. Many conversations start feeling repetitive. The same excuses, the same emotional reactions, the same impulsive patterns disguised as personality. Once you understand how controlled most people are by comfort and emotion, human behavior becomes easier to predict than most realize. Once you see how impulse controls people, human behavior starts becoming disturbingly repetitive. This often makes disciplined people quieter over time, not because they dislike others, but because constant emotional noise stops feeling meaningful. You become more selective with attention, energy, and emotional involvement. And the less emotionally available you become to chaos, the more psychologically difficult you become for others to control. That difficulty is what many people unconsciously interpret as danger. Human beings trust predictability. They feel safer around emotionally exposed individuals because they understand exactly how to influence them. But disciplined people slowly become harder to read, harder to tempt, harder to pressure, harder to emotionally corner, and unreadable people naturally create tension in social environments. The world feels safer around emotionally transparent people because they are easier to control. Discipline also changes your relationship with attention itself. Most people waste enormous amounts of mental energy reacting to things that provide no long-term value. Endless stimulation, endless emotional conflict, endless distractions disguised as entertainment. But disciplined people begin protecting attention carefully because they understand something dangerous. Whatever controls your attention eventually begins controlling your behavior. Once you understand that, discipline stops feeling restrictive. It begins feeling protective. You stop viewing self-control as punishment and start seeing it as defense against emotional chaos, manipulation, distraction, and unnecessary influence, and people who protect their mind that carefully become increasingly difficult for the world to consume psychologically. Discipline becomes dangerous the moment it stops being effort and starts becoming identity. This is why disciplined people often appear emotionally detached even when they are not. They simply stop reacting to every emotional invitation around them. Arguments, drama, validation cycles, provocation. Most people are constantly pulled into emotional currents created by others. But disciplined individuals become more selective because they understand how quickly emotional reactions can be used against a person. Over time, this creates a strange kind of authority. People begin trusting your words more because your behavior remains stable. Your reactions carry more weight because they are rare. Your presence feels calmer because it is not constantly seeking attention or validation. And consistency at that level becomes intimidating to emotionally reactive people, whether they consciously admit it or not. Controlled reactions often create more influence than emotional displays ever could. Most people mistake discipline for routine alone, but routine is only the surface. The real transformation happens psychologically. Discipline slowly restructures your relationship with pain, comfort, temptation, emotion, attention, and impulse. It changes what controls you internally, and once internal control changes, external behavior begins changing naturally without force. That is why disciplined individuals often become difficult to intimidate socially. They already spend large portions of their life confronting resistance voluntarily, isolation, repetition, delayed gratification, internal discomfort. Most people avoid these experiences instinctively, which means those experiences continue controlling them. But disciplined people slowly reverse that relationship until discomfort becomes familiar instead of threatening. Comment discipline if you have reached a point where comfort no longer controls your decisions the way it once did. And once discomfort stops controlling you, many other forms of control weaken with it. You become less desperate for approval, less reactive to criticism, less vulnerable to temptation, less emotionally dependent on external reassurance. The disciplined person becomes dangerous because they no longer need as much from the world emotionally as everyone else does. The less you emotionally need from the world, the less power the world begins having over you. This creates a quiet separation between disciplined people and the crowd over time, not necessarily through status immediately, but through behavior, emotional control, perception, and long-term direction. While most individuals continue reacting impulsively to temporary emotions, disciplined people keep building internal structure silently, and eventually, that structure becomes impossible to ignore externally. The dangerous thing about discipline is that it compounds slowly and almost invisibly at first, which is why most people completely underestimate what it eventually becomes over time. In the beginning, the changes are difficult for others to notice externally because the transformation happens internally long before it becomes visible outwardly. Most people only begin noticing the results once they become impossible to ignore. But by that point, the psychological transformation has already been developing privately for years without attention, praise, or recognition. The calmness, the restraint, the consistency, the focus, the emotional stability under pressure. None of it appeared suddenly or accidentally. It was built quietly, repeatedly, and intentionally, while most people remain distracted by comfort, emotional impulses, temporary pleasures, and immediate gratification. This is why disciplined individuals often make other people feel exposed unintentionally without ever directly trying to do so. Their behavior quietly highlights how emotionally reactive, impulsive, and externally controlled most people actually are beneath the surface. One person is ruled almost entirely by impulse, emotion, comfort, distraction, and immediate gratification. The other is ruled by intention, restraint, self-control, and long-term direction. One constantly seeks immediate emotional relief. The moment discomfort appears, the other learns how to tolerate discomfort, pressure, temptation, and emotional tension silently. without immediately escaping it. And human beings instinctively recognize, even subconsciously, which of those two individuals is psychologically harder to manipulate: pressure, tempt, or emotionally destabilize over time. Discipline quietly exposes which people are ruled by impulse and which people are ruled by intention. You also begin noticing over time how discipline slowly changes the emotional atmosphere around you in subtle but very noticeable ways. People become more careful with their words around you, more aware of your reactions, expressions, and emotional responses, more uncertain about how much influence, emotional leverage, or psychological control they actually still have over you anymore. Not because you become aggressive, loud, intimidating, or openly dominant, but because emotional restraint naturally creates a kind of psychological distance that most people are not used to encountering. And human beings often interpret emotional distance, calmness, and restraint as a form of quiet power, whether they consciously realize it or not. This is one reason disciplined people are often misunderstood by almost everyone around them over time. Others begin assuming they are cold, detached, arrogant, emotionally distant, or disconnected simply because they no longer react emotionally in the same impulsive ways most people do. But in reality, many disciplined individuals simply become far more protective over their attention, emotions, mental clarity, and emotional energy. They begin understanding something most people never fully realize. Constant emotional exposure slowly weakens clarity, judgment, self-control, and psychological stability over time. And once clarity, emotional control, and inner stability become genuinely valuable to you, many unnecessary conversations, emotional attachments, distractions, and interactions stop feeling important automatically. Most people spend years trying to control external circumstances while remaining completely uncontrolled internally. They try controlling outcomes, environments, other people's opinions, situations, and external conditions without ever learning how to control their own impulses, emotions, reactions, distractions, or desires consistently. Discipline quietly reverses that entire process over time. It teaches you that controlling your own mind matters far more than controlling environments, outcomes, or the behavior of other people around you. Because once internal control becomes strong enough, external instability slowly begins losing much of its psychological power over you. Pressure affects you differently. Temptation affects you differently. Emotional chaos affects you differently. And very few people truly realize how psychologically dangerous self-control becomes once external pressure stops having the ability to constantly change your behavior, decisions, emotional state, or direction. And perhaps that is why some disciplined people eventually begin appearing dangerous without ever needing to raise their voice, seek attention, or openly display aggression. Not because they are trying to intimidate others, not because they constantly seek dominance, control, or conflict, but because very few external things still possess the ability to control their emotions, attention, reactions, impulses, or overall direction in life the way they control most people automatically. And human beings become deeply unsettled around individuals who no longer depend emotionally on validation, comfort, distraction, approval, or emotional reassurance from the world in the same way everyone else unconsciously does. Most individuals never truly reach that point because they spend their entire life negotiating constantly with every temporary feeling, craving, impulse, or emotional reaction that appears inside them. The moment discomfort arrives, they search for escape. The moment pressure rises, their behavior changes. The moment emotion intensifies, their decisions begin shifting with it automatically. But discipline demands something far more difficult and psychologically rare. It demands acting according to principle even when emotion strongly resists it internally. Continuing movement even when motivation fades and comfort completely disappears. Remaining emotionally controlled even when pressure, uncertainty, temptation, frustration, or isolation begin rising around you. And once a person develops that level of consistency long enough, something unusual begins happening quietly. Their presence alone starts changing the emotional behavior, reactions, and psychological comfort of the people around them. If this video changed the way you see discipline, download my free ebook, The Art of Strategic Indifference, through the link in the description. It goes deeper into emotional control, silence, restraint, manipulation patterns, psychological leverage, and why disciplined people eventually become difficult to influence emotionally. And let me ask you something. What weakness do you think controls most people today without them realizing it? Let me know in the comments. Share this video with someone trying to build stronger self-control quietly. Subscribe if you want more psychological observations like this. And if you want access to the private material I do not fully structure for public platforms, there is also a Patreon linked in the description where I share deeper observations on discipline, power dynamics, emotional detachment, silence, restraint, and human behavior with the viewers who understand these subjects beyond surface level.